The Old Regime by Shibuya Kabuchi,
Connor Schreck,
and Ahmed Abadea.
Introduction to Russia. At the turn of the century, Russia was a vast empire, spanning 1/6 of the globe and inhabited by more than 125 million people. It was also a land of diverse terrain, from rich farmland to grassy steppe and frozen tundra, as well as a significant natural resource. Russia's population contained people from more than 100 ethnicities and 120 language groups. Around 45% were of Slavic heritage. Until the mid-1800s, Russia's social structure was semi-feudal. The vast majority of Russians lived in rural areas as bonded serfs. Defeat in the Crimean War exposed the need for social and economic reform, a process initiated by Tsar Alexander II. These reforms would trigger significant change in social unrest and revolutionary sentiment in Russia. Reform and reaction in the 1800s. The 1800s was a century of reform and reaction in Russia. It was marked by the emancipation of serfdom, revolutionary violence, and reactionary policies. Defeat in the Crimean War exposed Russia's lack of development in relation to its European neighbors. These outcomes became the catalyst for long-awaited reforms. Okay. The reign of a new Tsar, Alexander II, brought with it the emancipation of serfdom. After centuries of being bonded to land, Russia's serfs were freed, though only in name. Despite his reformist policies, Tsar Alexander II was murdered by the populist revolutionaries in 1881. The new Tsar, Alexander III, ordered a wave of reaction and repression. In the late 1800s, Russia also underwent a period of economic modernization and industrial growth, led largely by Sergei Witt and funded with government incentives and foreign investments. Ahmed Abdegadi.
Okay. The Tsarist autocracy was reinforced by claims to divine right and the teachings and political involvement of the Russian Orthodox Church. The divine right is the belief that power and authority were derived by God rather than people. The Russian Orthodox Church encourages Russians to accept and embrace Tsarist autocracy. They were also led to believe that it was God's will that they should love and obey the Tsar. The Russian military also enforced Tsarist autocracy by serving as a significant deterrent to domestic dissent or uprisings. The Tsar Imperial Army was one of the most feared forces in Europe, containing more than 1.5 million men. Officers imposed strict discipline, such as beatings, and most soldiers lived in ramshackle barracks, victualled with substandard food and provided with poor uniforms and equipment. The Russian army was poorly led. The army had a shortage of career officers, and there was a lack of motivation and competence. Battlefield defeats suggested a lack of tactical understanding of combat and an underestimation of the enemy. The Tsar's secret police, the Ukraina, also played an important role in identifying, tracking down, and dealing with political subversives. It formed in the wake of the 1881 assassination of Alexander II. By 1911, there were more than 60 security stations scattered around Russia. The Ukraina used a variety of methods to suppress or eliminate political oppositions. They included infiltrations, espionage, interrogation, the use of paid informants, agent provocators, torture, and extralegal killing.
Let me get that.
Russian
It's a
society.
rapper.
Russian society of comprised of more than 125 million people. The upper class was 12.5%, middle class 1.5%, working class 4%, and peasants 82%. The dominant classes were royalty, aristocracy, and landowners who wielded significant political influence. Russia's royalty and aristocracy, who for the most part lived lives of comfort, were isolated from the dissatisfactions of the lower class. Russia's middle class was in small comparisons to other nations but growing by the early 1900s. Russia's middle class worked as small business owners or trained professionals such as doctors,